You're chatting with a friend or watching some random video, when suddenly you get this weird feeling. Wait, I've already lived this moment before. These words, this situation, I remember this. You might even go one step further and think you can predict what the other person is about to say or do. It feels almost like a little superpower. That strange feeling has a name: déjà vu. But what is déjà vu, really? Is it some kind of glimpse into the future, or just your brain glitching in a very convincing way? Let's dive in and look at what science actually says. The term déjà vu comes from French and literally means already seen. It describes that intense sense of familiarity you get in a moment that should be completely new. Researchers have found that a large portion of people experience déjà vu at least once in their lifetime. So this isn't a rare, one-in-a-million phenomenon. It's a common human experience. And it's not the same thing as a false memory. In a false memory, you remember something that objectively never happened, as if it really did. In déjà vu, you don't have a clear memory of a past event. Instead, you have a strong feeling that the present moment is repeating without being able to say when or where it supposedly happened before. It's more of a gut-level familiarity than a detailed recollection. To understand déjà vu scientifically, researchers first needed a way to trigger it in a controlled way. One of the early approaches used hypnosis. In these experiments, participants were first shown a set of words, pictures, or scenes and asked to memorize them. Later, under hypnosis, researchers tried to partially block the conscious access to those memories without erasing them completely. After the hypnosis session, the same material was shown again. Some participants reported something very familiar. "I feel like I've seen this before, but I don't remember where." In other words, they experienced a lab-created sense of déjà vu. This suggests that when access to a memory trace is disrupted or blurred, but not fully erased, the brain can produce that eerie feeling of familiarity without a clear source. Of course, manipulating people's memory and consciousness with hypnosis raises ethical concerns. So, more recent research turned to a different tool that allows for safer and more precise control over experiences: virtual reality. Virtual reality is probably the closest thing we currently have to a real-life matrix. In some experiments, participants navigate through virtual environments: streets, hallways, rooms, and other scenes. Later, they are placed in new environments that are not identical, but intentionally designed to resemble the earlier ones in layout, structure, or visual cues. The key point is this: the second scene is not a perfect copy of the first, but it feels similar enough. When participants move through these similar environments, many of them report déjà vu. They feel as if they've been there before, even though the scene is technically different from anything they've previously experienced. This tells us something important. The brain doesn't need an exact repetition to trigger déjà vu. It just needs enough overlap in patterns, shapes, layouts, perspectives, or spatial relationships to label the moment as familiar. In other words, if a new situation matches an old one closely enough in structure, your brain may treat it as if it's repeating, even when it isn't. Now let's talk about one of the most seductive parts of déjà vu: the feeling that you can predict the future. Many people say something like, "When I have déjà vu, I don't just feel like I've seen this before, I also feel like I know what's about to happen next." That sounds supernatural, but is it? In one study using virtual reality, researchers first induced déjà vu in participants by placing them in similar, overlapping environments. Then they asked them whether they felt they could predict what was around the next corner or what would happen next in the scene. People who were experiencing déjà vu often believed they could. They were confident. "I just know it's going to be this way." But when researchers actually measured their accuracy, the results were clear. Their predictions were no better than those of people who were not experiencing déjà vu. So, déjà vu does not improve your ability to guess the future. What it does is create a powerful illusion that you can. Your brain is basically saying, "This is familiar, so I must somehow know what comes next," even when that's not true. It's a feeling of foresight without real foresight. To go deeper, we have to talk about memory itself and how messy it really is. Your brain is not a perfect hard drive. It doesn't save and replay life like a flawless video recording. Instead, it constantly reconstructs, edits, fills gaps, and sometimes corrupts its own data. One key concept here is called cryptomnesia, when a memory is partially lost, distorted, or buried, but not completely gone. In cryptomnesia, parts of an experience fade away, while a vague trace of familiarity remains. Later, you encounter something that resembles that old event. Because the original memory is incomplete or degraded, your brain struggles to match it properly. You don't consciously remember the original event, but the familiarity signal still fires. The result can feel exactly like déjà vu. I'm sure I've been here before. I just don't know when. Dreams may play a similar role. Dreams are strange hybrids of real experiences, random associations, and imagination. Most of them are quickly forgotten, but fragments can linger subconsciously. Later, when you live through a situation that resembles one of those forgotten dreams, your brain may fire that same familiarity signal, even though you don't consciously remember the dream. Some studies have found that a significant portion of people link their déjà vu experiences to something they believe they once dreamed. That doesn't mean every déjà vu comes from a dream, but it suggests that dreams can contribute to that feeling in at least some cases. Now let's look at the electrical side of the story. Timing in the brain. Your brain processes information using huge networks of neurons that communicate through electrical signals. Sensory information, what you see, hear, and feel, is often processed in both hemispheres of the brain, the left and the right. These two sides have to stay in close communication to create a unified, coherent experience of reality. The main bridge between them is a thick bundle of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum. Normally, when something happens, someone speaks, a door opens, a light flashes. The information reaches both hemispheres in a tightly coordinated time window. There can be tiny differences in timing, but the brain usually compensates for them. You experience one smooth moment, not two separate ones. But if there's a slight delay, and the synchronization system doesn't fully correct it, something interesting might happen. Imagine that the same event is effectively processed twice, once slightly earlier in one hemisphere, and then, with a tiny delay, in the other. If that delay crosses a certain threshold, the brain might misinterpret the second processing as a repeat of a past event, instead of part of the same continuous present. In that case, you may feel like, wait, this just happened. I'm reliving it. What's actually happening is that the brain's timing has drifted just enough for one processing of the moment to be mistaken for a memory of the other. The experience feels like repetition, but it's really a synchronization hiccup. This kind of subtle timing error is one of the leading candidates for the basic neurological mechanism behind déjà vu. Of course, in most people, déjà vu is occasional and harmless. It's strange, maybe a bit unsettling, but it fades quickly and life goes on. However, in rare cases, déjà vu can become persistent, intense, and disruptive. Some individuals report feeling as if almost everything they experience has already happened before. For them, the sensation isn't a brief flicker. It can dominate their perception and interfere with everyday life. They may struggle to distinguish between genuine memories and this constant repetition feeling. This kind of chronic déjà vu has been linked to certain neurological conditions, especially a form of epilepsy called temporal lobe epilepsy. In temporal lobe epilepsy, abnormal bursts of electrical activity occur in brain regions that are heavily involved in memory and emotion. During or around these mild seizures, patients often report powerful déjà vu experiences. In these cases, déjà vu is less of a philosophical curiosity and more of a symptom. Genetic studies suggest that specific gene variants may be connected to this kind of epilepsy and its associated experiences, including déjà vu. That means there could be a genetic component to how likely some people are to experience déjà vu in extreme forms. If someone experiences very frequent, long-lasting, or disturbing déjà vu episodes, especially if they're accompanied by other symptoms like confusion, unusual sensations, or brief lapses in awareness, it can be a sign that they should talk to a medical professional. Déjà vu also has some cousins in the world of strange memory phenomena. One of them is called jamais vu, which means never seen. Jamais vu is almost the opposite of déjà vu. In jamais vu, you're faced with something extremely familiar, like a common word, a familiar face, or a routine place. But for a moment, it feels strangely unfamiliar or wrong, as if you're seeing it for the first time. You might stare at a very ordinary word and suddenly think, is that really how it's spelled? This looks so weird. Or you might walk a route you've taken hundreds of times and briefly feel lost in a place you logically know well. Something similar happens in a phenomenon called semantic saturation or semantic satiation. If you repeat a word over and over, simit, 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 simit. After a while, it starts to lose its meaning and sound like a random noise. In experiments where people repeat a word many times, a large majority report that the word temporarily stops feeling like a real word. Their brain's connection between the sound and the meaning goes offline for a moment. That's very close to a form of jamais vu. There's also déjà entendu, already heard. That's when you hear something, like a melody or a sentence, and feel like you've heard it before, even though you probably haven't. It's the auditory version of déjà vu. Then there's the classic tip of the tongue phenomenon. You're trying to remember a word or a name and you're sure you know it. You can almost feel it sitting right there in your mind, but you just can't pull it out. A more dramatic cousin of this is sometimes called presque vu, almost seen. It's that feeling that you're on the verge of a big idea or a major insight, about to make some great discovery, but then it slips away. You're left with a lingering sense that something important almost clicked but never quite did. All of these phenomena, déjà vu, jamais vu, déjà entendu, tip of the tongue, presque vu, are different ways in which the brain's systems for familiarity, recognition, and recall can misfire or desynchronize. So what does all of this tell us? It tells us that, despite all of our progress in science and technology, we still don't fully understand some of the most basic operations of the human brain. There's a common belief, especially among younger people, that everything important has already been discovered, and that whatever remains is incomprehensible, like obscure quantum effects or exotic multiverse theories. But déjà vu is a perfect counterexample. It's not some distant cosmic mystery. It's a simple, everyday human experience that many of us have had. And yet, we still don't have a complete, unified explanation for it. We have strong clues, memory glitches, partial recall, dream fragments, timing errors between brain regions, epileptic activity in specific circuits, possible genetic influences. We have models and hypotheses, but we don't have the final, full picture. So if you ever feel like there's nothing left to discover, remember this: your own brain is quietly generating phenomena we still can't fully explain. Déjà vu is not proof that you're psychic. It's proof that there are still deep, unsolved mysteries hiding in the most ordinary moments of your life. And maybe, one day, someone who watches a video like this will decide to study the brain, run new experiments, and finally piece together the full story behind déjà vu. If that happens, they might have a very strange moment in the lab and think to themselves, funny, I feel like I've lived this exact discovery before. And that, in itself, would be a pretty fitting ending.